So come on close. Yeah. What if we want to be together?
Later, Reg.
So, you know, I mean, like, I wanted Robert to be with me kind of, and by the way, welcome to Wearable World in GlazeCon day 2. I know we're all a little bit tired from all the crazy content we had yesterday. But, you know, over the last year, I guess Robert and I have got to be pretty close. We've shared a lot of crazy moments together. But also, I think we've shared the emergence of this ecosystem. And you know, he's definitely given me a lot of insight into like where the future is going to be, and you know, hopefully I've talked some business stuff to him, you know, but in general, I mean, I think we've come to agree on a couple things, like, you know, empathy is like kind of ruling the day on creating great products. I think, you know, our confusion with, you know, Google Glass and how it could be so much better, and yet it's just not there. I mean, there's a lot of different things.
Should we talk about that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think that we could probably kick it off and talk about, you know, Google for a little bit, and, you know, the direction that we've seen them take over the last little bit. I think that that's, when we start off the year in review, I mean, we started off as a company called Stained Glass Labs, right? And we've switched to the name Wearable World, you know, somewhere along the way. And I think that that was indicative of how we saw the ecosystem roll out. So what have you seen from Google over like the last year? Positives, negatives?
Let's talk about empathy, because I've been thinking a lot about that since we talked at Coachella about why this isn't empathetic. And I've been watching people who are wearing it and people who aren't wearing it react to people who are wearing it, and also looking at it from a different point of view, because I've had them now for a year. And a year ago, I was really excited by them because it's like, this is the future. It's like the Apple II. It's a new thing. You know, it made me feel the same way that unboxing an Apple II in 1977 did. You know, it's like, this is, you know, going to change my life. And a year later, my enthusiasm is still there for on-the-face wearables, you know, and I'm still seeing lots of startups who are in this space. Some of which, you know, this is a prototype that's coming out next year, you know, to compete with Oculus Rift. You can put your phone in here. It's from Merge, a new startup. Cool. So I'm tracking this space, but glass is not empathetic for a couple reasons. One, there's always a screen in between us. And so there's a change in our social contract with each other, right? We got used to having this thing lighting up and in front of us, but this is sort of empathetic because you can see what I'm distracted by here.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm doing here. You know whether I'm looking at porn or you know, or answering Twitter or
worst story ever with that. I'm gonna tell it. I was standing with my mom, and my mother I was talking to someone else, and my mother got an obscene picture. And I like looked down, I was like, and I looked at her and she's like, what's that? You know, I mean, it's like, so it's yeah, no, I totally get that. Like, yeah. Absolutely right.
Where if this thing lights up, you know, like it does once in a while, I can't even get it to light up right now. When it lights up, you're not sure what the hell I'm doing. And I notice this when I'm talking with people with glass on and it lights up or they start doing something, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Not because they're recording me, because I don't think it's about the recording. If people were freaked out by recording, they'd be freaked out by cell phones. I mean, at Coachella, everybody is holding a phone in the air and recording everything around them, or a GoPro camera on a stick and recording everything around them, which takes a lot better video than this thing does. But it's the fact that there's a screen in between us that you can't really see. Makes it unempathetic right away.
Well, and this is not like bag on Google. Like, this is us like really trying to figure out what's up with the industry and the ecosystem. I think, like, what are you taught as a kid? You know, when we're talking, look me in the eye.
Yeah.
And there is this thing that happens where people, like with glass, will do this a lot. And we're taught at an early age, if you're not looking me in the eye, there's something dishonest, or you're lying to me, or there's a continual negativity that's in that social contract.
Well, if this thing lights up and lights my eyeball up, now you look like a cyborg, you know? And it's like, whoa, what just happened?
Which
you know,
even
if you don't look at
it, right?
it could be hot, you know. But What I found is when I'm talking to people, I like to flip it up or put it around my neck or something like that. And then I notice that it's not empathetic in another way. There's no way to fold it up. You know, there's no way to cover up the camera. There's no way to make it feel comfortable on my skin when I do that, right? It bothers the top of my head. And so I wear it less and less, and because it's not fitting into my lifestyle, and it's not letting me use it when it's appropriate to use it. You know, like getting directions walking around a city is really awesome here, but in a conversation like this, why would I be wearing it right now?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think that like that's. I think
Other
that
than it's sort of nice to get tweets, you know, in our eye, but I can do that with a phone in a far more social way.
Yeah, there's not a bit. Well, what I will say is that maybe there's also there's an indicativeness as everyone gets in off the bus now. So there's this indicativeness of that the entire ecosystem and industry is really interested, you know, in, or the consumer has this high expectation, right? We expect this, and then we're kind of disappointed. And my fear is that wearables in general, you know, we have this entire consumer generation, this huge expectation, and maybe, you know, because glass was kind of the first thing out with these first 10,000 people, that maybe this is just it, and maybe there should be a real fear here that this is the entire, you know, this is how everybody's going to feel about it, right?
I don't worry about it that way. You know, the Newton came along and, you know, showed us a new device that's about this big, and it didn't quite do that well.
Yeah.
And you might say it sort of give Palm devices a little bit of a bad name for a little while. I mean, Doonesbury was writing cartoons about how stupid it was, you know, stuff like that. But we got over that, and eventually the technology and the utility of it got to the place where everybody has to have one. We all have a smartphone now that looks somewhat like the Newton does. It's a little bit smaller, but it's the same idea as a smart thing in your palm, right? And the Apple II was the same way. When I got my Apple II, it had no software, and it cost $2,000 in 1977. So it cost about $12,000 for my dad to buy one. An extraordinary amount of money for a new device that had no utility. Yeah. So I think you know, over the next decade we're going to see iteration after iteration on wearables. You know, and we've seen already several startups. You know, from Meta at one level, which is trying to build a virtual reality or an augmented reality thing. It has two screens. It has a front-facing 3D sensor that, as you aim your head around, it builds a 3D map of the world, so it can put user interface elements down, and it can interact with the world, and it has a UI that sticks in front of you, and I can use my hands to manipulate that UI and do things with my hands because the 3D sensor is seeing my fingers and stuff like that. So it's cool technology, but we haven't yet figured out what's the thing that is going to make it so that everybody has to have it.
Well, I mean, we went through like this iterative process where we had phones, and then we had like smarter phones, and we had really smart phones, but you know, no one believed in like that technology. You know, I remember the early mobile guys, because I'm kind of a mobile guy, right? They're like, oh, no one will ever watch a TV on this. The internet's too slow. Have you ever tried to
Steve Jobs said that even after the iPhone came out. Who wants to watch a video on an iPhone? And everybody's like, oh, Steve's lying his ass off.
Yeah.
Steve did that, right?
Yeah.
He would lie. In fact, Andy's here, right?
Yeah.
Is Andy here?
Yeah, he's right here.
And Andy worked for Steve and was one of the 12 guys who built the iPhone. So he would lie his ass off, right? Before
teaser for an upcoming panel.
You know? You know?
Yeah.
Nobody ever wants an on-the-face wearable is the latest thing, you know? Yeah. Only vertical markets want this.
Well, you know, I think that something happens with technology is that there is some innovator that breaks through and figures it out, and then everyone is allowed to copy it in their own way, and it makes it unique. I mean, I think the emergence of Samsung as a mobile powerhouse, I mean, I would argue that Samsung is probably the best at monetizing a mobile device, even better than Apple, if you look at how their revenue shares are split. And they're the only one that really monetizes Android, like in a positive way. Yeah. So I think that like there still is that need for somebody to really break through and really understand the human condition and experience on the wearable side in such a deep, intrinsic, empathetic way that it just works. And whoever does that, as long as they've got the will to do it, can define this industry still.
I've been telling my friends that we're living in 180, or when the year before Apple comes out with the watch.
Yeah, no, I hear it. Yeah.
You know, and I think if that product sucks, it's going to radically change what we think of as the wearable industry.
Yep.
And if that product really is beautiful and Johnny Ives did a masterpiece, we're all going to change what we think about the wearable industry. So we're all waiting for Apple, I think.
It's like the classic waiting for good. Well, if you see what they've done with their HomeKit, what they're doing with their beacons, and this is again back to the year of what we've seen in the year of wearables. I mean, they're doing a big push. So in my mind, Apple has decided to really take on establishing that middle layer and that middleware, and that's kind of been their big strategy. It's like, we'll fix the devices. Let's see where everything else is kind of going out while they're working on it. But it's also, there's this firm execution around creating the infrastructure middleware layer, which is something that Apple's not been really good at in the past.
Where I think the on-the-face wearables is going, and I was just in Israel and saw a company called ShopCloud. And ShopCloud does indoor mapping, but they don't do just mapping. What they do is turn on the camera on your mobile phone, and they can actually see that you're moving around because the floor is going underneath your camera, right? As you're walking around.
Oh, super cool.
And they showed us they met me out front of their office, and we walked in, and it navigated them into the office, and then they walked up to their security thing, and it saw the security thing and unlocked the door. Automatically.
That's legit, right?
Right? So imagine you're wearing this, you're walking into your office, and it just talks to the door and unlocks the door. And and then you got in, and it uses the visuals in the room that it already knows about to know where you are. So it knew how far away the picture on the wall was, and it told they could pull up a debugging mode and see that. And it's crazy.
True contextual presence.
2D camera,
What's
just be able to walk around.
Always
and see.
like busting out awesome tech, right?
Yeah.
I think that this stuff is like really kind of important, right? And from like the technological aspect, I want to hit a little bit about the business aspect. We've seen several major acquisitions, right? And wearables is great for us because it's hot and people.
You mean like Basis going to Intel?
Basis going to Intel was not great. Beats, I consider headphones a wearable. Beats to Apple. Nest, because I fudged a little bit, because I think that without actual touching of humanity, you can't have a true connected home. So the Nest acquisition, Oculus Rift was like a fascinating acquisition.
Yeah. I think Facebook did that for HR purposes, because I think they were losing recruits to Google, because if you're a 20-year-old kid going to Waterloo Computer Science Department, and you go to the career fair, and there's a Microsoft booth and a Google booth and a Facebook booth. Google has self-driving cars, and they have Google Glass, and they have balloons over Africa and all this stuff. And then you go over to Facebook, what do you guys got? Oh, we got the world's biggest social network. Who cares, but now they have Oculus. Do you want to work with Carmack? Now it's a lot more interesting to work at Facebook.
Well, I think sometimes we underestimate the value of like being able to acquire amazing employees, and even in the sense that I think Tony is brilliant. What he did with Nest. I think that Google picks up an amazing team. Somebody says it's the biggest acqui-hire ever, but when you really look at it, owning the home and being in the home is with this whole Android Wear, it's really
he got a lot of Apple. How many Apple employees were at Nest? Most of the Nest employees were former Apple people. So he hired basically the iPhone design team, by buying Nest.
Yes, which is
everybody but Andy. I don't know how Andy got left out of this.
Andy slipped out. Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs, Andy, have like this thing where it's like, hey, I'm going to give you some advisory shares, you give me some, and it all works out. I don't know if you and Tony worked that out on the side, but we'll get that on stage again. Another teaser for Future Pro. But I think in general, what's your general assessment of the ecosystem?
I think we're in the year before Apple, and we're trying to figure out what that means. Is that going to be a brilliant product? Is that going to change how we all view wearables? And does it verify the space and make the space even look as cool as we think it is? or is the product really going to suck and Apple's just going to, and I don't think so. Based on what I saw at the WWDC with the health app and the home automation app and the functionality underneath there for developers, I think that's serious signaling that Apple's up to something. And the fact that Nike gave up and fired all their fuel band developers tells me a lot too.
Yeah.
Because Tim Cook's on the board of
Yeah.
Nike. Of course he's shown them the watch.
Yeah.
Of course they've seen it. And of course, if they thought it sucked, they wouldn't have given up. They would have said, we're going to stay in this for another year.
Yeah, we're going to keep pushing it.
So I think that's another signaler that there is a major shift point coming in this industry with Apple, and that we're going to reconfigure, even if we're not an Apple device, we're going to reconfigure what we think of ourselves around that announcement.
Yeah, I think that one of the strengths that the iPhone had, when it launched and when it came out, was the fact that they took all the necessary and needed capabilities in order to build a successful business from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and delivered that, and then were able to drive mass market adoption. And to be fair, I mean, it was just wicked smooth and sweet. I will tell you, the only other platform that was as beautiful and as wonderful to develop and write stuff on was WebOS, right, for Palm. I mean, Palm was an amazing thing, and I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, this is great. But it was, a lot of it has to do with just the power to get people to believe in your technology.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I think that Steve was able to do, is he was able to get people to believe before it was actually true. In a mass scale. So the biggest cult leader that we've ever had probably is Steve Jobs, right? So he was able to kind of establish that. I don't know of anybody that has that dominant charisma and market appeal that's building any of these technologies today. And so I think that, I worry
Elon Musk at Tesla.
Elon, that'd be great.
That's the ultimate wearable, right? It's a $100,000 wearable.
I wanted it so bad versus my other car. So
one other trend I'm noticing after going to Israel is everything is going to have smarts in it. I saw a baby bottle that has sensors and has smarts in it. I saw smart thermometers. At your party on Saturday night, I saw a vibrator with smarts in it.
Smart vibrator, amazing.
A cloud connected vibrator, which proves that everything is.
Who doesn't want one of those, man? Andy's got one on right now. Every time I hit my pocket, his goes off.
That's why Andy's always smiling. Don't judge me. The smarts are the compute power is shrinking, and the costs are coming down, and that means that we're getting compute in everything, and that's going to be a trend that is going to change all of our computing.
I'll say,
experiences.
I think that we've had an extremely successful year as far as building expectation in general for the audience. I think the one thing that I haven't seen anybody do, and technology has always been about the haves versus the have-nots, right? And we've been continually extending human capabilities over time, right? For a while, people would just not have glasses.
Yeah.
But believe me, like as soon as it was available, like people with wealth would have it. As we move forward into an area where we're like legitimately extending human capabilities, maybe it's mass memory, maybe it's extended human life, maybe it's all those other things. I think one of the trends that I haven't seen that makes me worried is that it's still like, $1,500 for a pair of Google glasses.
Yeah, but that's going to change. Google is just artificially keeping the price up. The cost of goods on this thing's about $100, $150 at most. 3D sensors, when I wrote my book, were more than $100 when I saw them at the Consumer Electronics Show last year, a year ago. This year they were $20, and the new Wowie robot that's coming out this month has a 50-cent 3D sensor in it.
Oh, right on.
So the costs of sensors are coming down at a pretty good clip. I think time solves the cost issue. I am seeing a new digital divide, though, not between people who can afford things and people who can't afford things, but people who are all in, like me and you probably, and people like Richard Stallman who are all out. He wears a button that says, pay cash for everything, stay off the grid, don't be on Facebook. He's not on Facebook, he's not using credit cards and stuff like that.
It's crazy.
And I'm seeing that those people are going to get left behind.
Yeah.
Here's an example. I use this thing called TripIt on my iPhone. TripIt, I give access to my Gmail. So think about that. I have a third-party company, a public company, Concur, that owns TripIt, has access to my Google Mail and can algorithmically go in there and do whatever the hell it wants.
Yeah.
And I give it permission to do that. So it, you know, it's looking for travel tickets. It's looking for my United tickets, my Avis rental cars, stuff like that. I was in a plane in Chicago and just about to go home. We were about to leave. And TripIt says your plane's being canceled. Click here for another flight out of town. Click. It had my credit card as well. I give TripIt my credit card.
Yeah.
So I give it a lot of personal information. Click, buy a ticket. 2 minutes later, the pilot comes on and says, hey, we're going back to the gate because we can't get our engine started. We're having trouble. There is no other plane tonight. You can go in and talk to the customer service personnel inside. There was 3 seats on that other plane.
Oh, that's awesome.
And there was 100 and something people on the plane. So 100 and something people lost the game of life that night. They had to stay in Chicago. And that's the kind of utility that this industry is going to continue to bring. You know, soon we're going to have a wearable that's going to tell you you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow. And it might save your life. If it saves your life, you won the game of life that night. You know? And on and on and on. Right?
I mean, we're running over right now, and I love your time. One, if you haven't bought Robert's book, it is a must for any business person. I would put it probably in a locker for about 4 years and then read it and plan your strategy out because he really does have that kind of insight. It's almost too far ahead, so don't follow everything from it, but you should know what's going on. Thank you, Robert, for spending time with me, brother.
Thanks.
Always appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it.
And Shirley will come up and energize the crowd right now.
Yay.
You guys have no idea how awesome she is. You're about to find out.
Thank you.